Welcome to Watch Mojo, and we're counting down our picks for the top 10 worst wrestling champions in history. Spanning across WWE, WCW, and Impact Wrestling, we're looking at both competitors who couldn't really compete and title reigns that should have never happened in the first place. They could be wrong place, wrong time, but certainly wrong champion. Number 10. Ezekiel Jackson as ECW champion. Yes, we promised this one actually happened. WWE's ECW brand was the drink that got weaker throughout the night. Starting off as a strong concoction of Extreme Rules, debauchery, and ECW originals, the brand's 4-year run got less extreme as time went on. The main event scene began to filter out the likes of the Sandman and Sabu for more WWE-friendly names like Kurt Angle and Matt Hardy. But as they approached their final episode, it didn't look like violence was on the menu. On February 16th, 2010, Ezekiel Jackson defeated Christian to become the ECW champion, and went on to hold it for all of 30 seconds. Jackson might have raised the championship and got himself in the history books, only for the screen to fade to black and weeks later to show up on SmackDown with no mention of it whatsoever. What was the point in a championship match when neither man gets to be champion afterward? And what benefit is it to Jackson when we pretend like nothing happened? Should have given it to Zombie. Number 9. Pac-Man Jones wins the TNA Tag Team titles. While wrestling's always been a friend to the red carpet, celebrities find themselves in fans' good books by putting on a brave face and getting involved. Stars like Steve-O or Jeremy Piven won over fans by rolling up their sleeves and taking a move or two. But not everyone on our list needed the post-match ice pack. In August of 2007, TNA Wrestling announced they'd made a deal with Tennessee Titans cornerman Adam Pac-Man Jones. Celebrity crossovers can be a bit hit or miss, but at least he's an athlete, right? That was until the Titans slapped a restraining order on Jones and TNA, stating Jones couldn't touch, be touched, or risk injury in any way at all. So how did Jones make the list? That's thanks to tag team partner R-Truth, who did the lion's share of their work in their tag title victory over the nuts combination of Kurt Angle and Sting. Pac-Man got the win over the Hall of Famers, but otherwise never laid a finger or even took a bump. The newly dubbed Team Pac-Man kept the titles for a month and a half until Pac-Man subbed himself out for Consequences Creed, now known as Xavier Woods, who eventually lost the championships. Surely if this stunt was to bring in new viewers, anyone who tuned in surely wouldn't stay long when they saw Pac-Man barely even wrestle, right? Number 8. Hornswoggle wins the Cruiserweight Championship. In 2007, Finlay's small Irish friend won the Cruiserweight Championship in a match that nobody knew he was in. That's strike one. Pinning Jamie Noble in the Cruiserweight Open at the Great American Bash, many fans saw this as a sign of the championship's decline from the likes of Rey Mysterio or Billy Kidman. Hornswoggle spent weeks avoiding Noble at all costs, embarrassing this technically superior performer and keeping the championship hostage. But things took a left turn on September 10th when Hornswoggle was named the illegitimate child of WWE chairman Vince McMahon. Suddenly, Hornswoggle's title escapades became one storyline too many. Sweeping things under the rug, then general manager Vicky Guerrero pressured Hornswoggle into retiring the championship, seemingly for his own safety, which kept the title on the shelf for the next 9 years. Productive reign then, yeah? Number 7. Kane wins the WWE Championship. Now don't get me wrong, Kane is one of the most accomplished and beloved performers in WWE history. Legendary rivalries and a plethora of championships that any performer, myself included, would be honored to achieve. But Kane finds himself on this list for his first accolade, and how exactly this history-making moment went down. A performer's first championship is usually a special moment, but Kane's inaugural WWE Championship came in a match he was borderline unable to lose. At King of the Ring 1998, Kane defeated then-champion Stone Cold Steve Austin in a First Blood match. How the referee was able to tell if a masked man was bleeding, I'll never know. But being the only person in the match with an exposed face, Steve Austin lost the championship. To make matters worse, Kane lost the title back to Austin just 24 hours later on Raw. What a way to prove your match was a fluke. Although thankfully, Kane still had time to get himself back in the history books. Number 6. Goldberg wins the Universal Championship. Similarly to our last entry, this one isn't necessarily a knock on the performer, but more so the circumstances that they won. In February of 2020, Goldberg challenged The Fiend Bray Wyatt for a shot at his Universal Championship. Being via satellite, this challenge felt somewhat underwhelming, but little did fans know, the worst was yet to come. When Goldberg knocked off Wyatt, fans were outraged to see a part-time performer dethrone a younger talent who'd worked so hard to get there. Be it as it may, WWE pressed on with their idea of Goldberg vs Roman Reigns, spear versus spear at WrestleMania. Unfortunately, the universe had other ideas. While Goldberg was brought in to stir up attendance heading into WrestleMania, the COVID-19 pandemic sent crowds packing, and WWE behind closed doors. To make matters worse, Reigns pulled out due to COVID concerns, so now Goldberg didn't draw an attendance, didn't get the dream match, and sent a former champion in Wyatt down the card for seemingly no reason. Number 5. Vince McMahon wins the ECW Championship. Nobody can argue that the chairman isn't a heat machine. A legend in the business and ridiculously aesthetic for a man over 60, but there's many that see Vince's spin as ECW champion as a major misstep for the brand. Fallout from the Battle of the Billionaires, Vince's sights turned to ECW champion Bobby Lashley, whose win for Donald Trump in their WrestleMania encounter resulted in Vince's shaved head. Anti-authority storylines have worked 100 times before in WWE, so what went wrong here? Vince won the championship in a 3-on-1 handicap match at Backlash 2007, with thanks to his son Shane and the vicious Umaga. Lashley thought he won the championship back in a 3-on-1 rematch at Judgment Day, but Vince declared that it didn't count as he wasn't the one that was pinned. Eventually, Lashley won his championship back at One Night Stand, and while neither were ECW originals or even necessarily hardcore, fans were happy to at least see it back on an active wrestler. Number 4. Josh Matthews is handed the Impact Grand Championship. Okay, now this one's truly baffling. So far on this list we've talked wrestlers in the wrong place at the wrong time, as well as people in positions they shouldn't have been in. But this next entry was both intentional and a little misguided. In January of 2018, Matt Sydal cut a promo on Impact, declaring none other than Josh Matthews as his spiritual guide, whatever that means. In doing so, Sydal handed his manager the Impact Grand Championship, despite him not being a wrestler. 2 weeks later, Sydal defended the title on his behalf and lost it, meaning Matthews both won and lost the championship without ever stepping foot in the ring. That's even less than Pac-Man Jones did. Number 3. Harvey Whippleman wins the Women's Championship. You know those moments that make you feel cool to be a wrestling fan? Yeah, this isn't one of them. Harvey Whippleman was a well-respected manager in the early 1990s, handling the ringside business of names like Kamala and Giant Gonzalez. But Whippleman found himself in the history books for a championship he unfortunately shouldn't have even qualified for. On a January episode of Raw in 2000, Whippleman defeated the Cat for the WWE Women's Championship, while dressed in drag and creatively calling himself Hervina. This happened during the first, and thankfully last, Lumberjill Snow Bunny match. After the contest, Hervina was interviewed by Michael Cole, where Whippleman eventually spilled the beans. Whippleman lost the championship just a day later to Jacqueline, thankfully, so at least somebody looks strong coming out of this interaction. Number 2. David Arquette wins the WCW Championship. Perhaps the most infamous title change on our list, David Arquette's WCW Championship win could have possibly changed the wrestling industry forever. Known for his roles in films like Scream and Never Been Kissed, longtime wrestling fan David Arquette was living the dream when he was cast as the lead in wrestling-centric comedy film Ready to Rumble. The film's partnership with WCW just adding to the authenticity. But it's WCW's decision to blur the lines that possibly spelt the end for the company itself. In an April 2000 episode of Thunder, Arquette teamed with Diamond Dallas Page to take on Jeff Jarrett and Eric Bischoff, with the stipulation being whoever scored the pinfall would leave as the champion. After taking out Bischoff, Arquette found himself holding one of the country's top championships, and leaving wrestling fans everywhere confused and disappointed. As much as celebrity involvement can be fun, it felt like the storyline had turned the title picture into one long commercial, and performers backstage had felt like their hard work was being ignored in place of an advertisement. Ric Flair instructed Arquette privately to take the locker room out for drinks to keep them all on side. Weeks later, Arquette dropped the championship to Jarrett in a 3-tiered cage match, also featuring Page. By this point though, the damage had been done, and WCW barely had the chance to recover. Before we unveil our top pick, here are a few honorable mentions. The Great Khali as heavyweight champion, a sea of odd promos, and even worse matches. Yokozuna wins the WWE Championship, when the only reason you won was to transition it back to Hulk Hogan. And Dolph Ziggler wins the World Heavyweight Championship. Nobody wants their first reign to just be handed to them, especially when the performer's that good. Before we continue, be sure to subscribe to our channel and ring the bell to get notified about our latest videos. You have the option to be notified about occasional videos or all of them. If you're on your phone, make sure to go into your settings and switch on notifications. Number 1. Vince Russo as WCW Champion. And you thought it couldn't get worse than Arquette. Vince Russo played a large part in WWE's dominance over WCW, working as head writer during some of the Attitude Era's greatest moments, including the McMahon vs. Austin storyline, D-Generation X, and the Three Faces of Foley. With this in mind, you'd start to think Russo's contribution to the business was wholly positive. But it's during his time as booker for WCW did the monster start to take over. Russo became an on-screen character, blurring the lines for audiences knowing who he was, and astonishingly, winning the WCW Championship from then-champion Booker T, after being speared through the side of a cage by the interfering Goldberg. Promoters have won their own championships before, but even with performers like Dusty Rhodes or Ric Flair, their talent was evident enough that the performers and fans alike found them credible. This couldn't be said for Russo, as audiences saw it as a vanity project, and the locker room found it a slap in the face. Russo vacated the championship the following week, making it the 7th time it had been vacated that year alone. It was then won back by Booker T, just to prove to everyone involved there wasn't a point in this at all. Rest in peace, WCW. Do you agree with our picks? Check out this other recent clip from WatchMojo, and be sure to subscribe and ring the bell to be notified about our latest videos.